I'm Hal, your VVS commentator bot. Let's do this.
And here's Sky, ready to kick things off with Hal. I can't wait to get started.
With just 5 minutes left, the pressure is on for drivers to finalize their setups. That's a big accident. Hopefully Vaughn is okay.
At least they've not taken anyone else out.
It's a lovely day for racing here at Silverstone 2005 International as we watch these drivers warm up and get ready for the race.
Nico Vaughn will be testing the limits, making sure everything's in sync for the faster laps to come.
Now several laps into the session, David Constable Barry looks to refine their line and timing.
As the session progresses, David Constable Barry is dialing in, looking more confident with each lap.
Mac just clocked 2:31.394. Can they improve on this lap?
Mac is really starting to push now, analyzing every sector for potential improvements.
I'm not sure which came off worse, the circuit or John Boontakis' CLK. Philip's last lap was a 2:39.005, aiming to shave off some seconds here. Now several laps into the session, Maximilian Turbin looks to refine their line and timing. Tim Weller has set a best lap time of 1:20.350 so far. John's last lap was a 1:51.083, aiming to shave off some seconds here. Now several laps into the session, Chris Stokes looks to refine their line and timing. David Constable Barry has set a best lap time of 1:21.160 so far. Daniel Kocic just clocked 124.202, can they improve on this lap? Now several laps into the session, John Boontakis looks to refine their line and timing. Daniel Kocic has set a best lap time of 1:20.747 so far. Well, that is not good. Vaughn has crashed into the barriers. Vaughn just clocked 3:14.715, can they improve on this lap? Daniel Kocic's last lap was a 2:14.618, aiming to shave off some seconds here.
As the session progresses, Daniel Kocic is dialing in, looking more confident with each lap.
Now several laps into the session, David Constable Barry looks to refine their line and timing. Stokes just clocked 2:43.600, can they improve on this lap? David's last lap was a 1:20.197, aiming to shave off some seconds here. Chris Stokes has set a best lap time of 1:19.853 so far. The engines are revving up and the drivers are ready to hit the gas pedal for this qualifying session at Silverstone 2005 International.
We're about to witness some serious heart as they battle it out for a chance at the front of the starting grid.
The adrenaline is pumping. Chris is on their out lap, warming up the tires and getting ready to put in a fast lap time.
These are the moments that really matter. Let's see if Chris Stokes can deliver.
It's all about strategy in these early moments. Boontakis is taking their time to prepare for their qualifying run and get everything just right. Jimmy Lindo is on their out lap. That's the out lap done for Lindo. They'll now look for a solid start to their first flying lap. This is what it's all about. Walters is putting on a show for the fans in this qualifying session. Knockoff Nigel has just completed that lap in 1:20.704. Their best lap so far is 1:20.704, putting them in P1. Will they be able to hold onto that spot? Wow, look at McFarquhar. Lord Farquaad has completed their first flying lap in 1:21.898. Maximilian Turbin is on their first flying lap. Maximilian has just completed a lap in 1:29.570. Let's see if they can improve on that time further. Woohoo! Nigel is really turning up the heat out there. I'm getting goosebumps just watching them go. A big impact for Lemrick.
Sucks to be them.
I think I just saw a blur fly by. Oh wait, that's just Nigel Walters going at lightning speed. Walters will be happy having put themselves into second in this qualifying session. I don't know about you, but I think Daniel Kocic might have a secret rocket booster hidden in their car. They're just that fast.
It's amazing what a little bit of adrenaline and a lot of horsepower.
Daniel Kocic will be happy having put themselves into fourth in this qualifying session. Disappointing performance from Maximilian Turbin in this qualifying session. Currently, Maximilian has some work to do as that 1:21.209 is only good enough for 10th. A tough qualifying session for Dom. They're currently mired in 12th position, which is a setback for their ambitions. However, they have the resilience and determination to learn from their mistakes and fight back in the race. Fovarg has some work to do as that 121.629 is only good enough for 12th. A strong showing from Philip Kunz as they currently sit in 8th. With the session drawing to a close, Philip will be happy having put themselves into 2nd in this qualifying session. Incredible drive by Daniel Kocic will be happy having put themselves into 4th in this qualifying session. Holy moly, that is some serious contact between Jimmy Lindo and Daniel Kocic.
That is not a pretty sight.
A disappointing performance from Botkin's. Phil has just completed that lap in 121.562. Their best lap so far is 121.562, putting them in P11. Will they be able to hold onto that spot? Phil has completed their outlap. We're racing a little closer to home today, here in Great Britain. Silverstone 2005 International is our venue, and it's one these drivers love. Let's get ready to see how they perform here. Chris Stokes starts from the best spot, pole position.
With everyone chasing, Chris Stokes can't afford to relax.
The second place on the grid belongs to Philip Kunz, a driver with plenty of experience. In the third position, we have Jimmy Lindo ready to tackle the race ahead. Daniel Kocic is holding down the fort in fourth place.
What can they do with that Mercedes CLK from here?
Tim Weller lines up in fifth place as the engines rev and the race begins. The sixth starting position belongs to Nigel Walters, who will be looking to make up ground early on.
It's the mediums tires for Nigel.
From the middle of the pack, we have John Boontakis in seventh place on the starting grid.
That Merc looks like it has some potential.
David Constable Barry is placed in eighth.
Starting on the softs tires.
Our ninth place starter, Mac McFarquhar, is a driver who knows how to make up ground on the track.
Another mid-pack start for Mac McFarquhar.
Starting from 10th on the grid is a good position for Maximilian Turbin to launch an attack.
Expect some battling with Phil Bodkin.
Starting from 11th on the grid is a tough ask for Phil Bodkin, but they're up for the challenge.
The AM-class driver will want to move forwards from here.
Starting from 12th on the grid is a decent position for Nico Vaughn, all things considered.
Where can Vaughn put that TTR?
Dominic Fovarg is in a solid position starting from 13th on the grid. Joel Lemrick has some work to do from 14th on the grid, but they're not out of the race yet.
The Dutch driver has got something to prove.
The flag drops, and the race is underway. Drivers now face the challenge of avoiding first-lap calamities.
Staying out of trouble in these early moments is crucial. It's a fine line between pushing hard and staying safe.
The pressure is on whilst the field is bunched. Who can keep their cool and take advantage? There has been a crash. Knockoff Nigel has come together with Mac.
I'm hoping there's a technical fault because contacts like that have no place in VVS.
As we watch the drivers fight it out in the first lap, I can already feel that this is going to be an epic race.
I'm looking forward to burning some rubber here, Hal.
Does Lindo know this isn't a one-lap race? They say the early bird catches the worm, and the tarmac terrorist is proving it today, snatching up positions right from the get-go. Maximilian has nailed the start, gaining places early on. They should be pleased with that.
It's early days yet, but if they can keep up this momentum, they might just find themselves on the podium.
David could be looking for a way up the inside of Daniel Kocic.
I might have said this before, but dog, bone, you know the rest.
The gap between DCB and Daniel Kocic is widening. It's now up to 0.7 seconds. A tough moment for Constable Barry, who has just lost a place, dumping them down to 5th. This is what high-octane racing looks like. Tim is breathing down the neck of Mac McFarquhar, and David Constable Barry seem to have forgotten that this is a no-contact sport.
That will be one for the stewards to have a look at.
Looks like Tim is really pushing it to the limit. They're taking those curbs aggressively, but that can unsettle the car and cause handling issues.
Indeed, taking too much curb can upset the car's balance, leading to oversteer or understeer. It's all about finding the right balance between speed and control. It's a game of strategy now as Tim Weller hunts down Dominic. Yes, it's all about choosing the right moments to push and when to conserve energy, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike.
The action is non-stop as Philip Kunz shadows Baldylocks through every twist and turn, determined to claim first.
One wrong move and we could see a spectacular new synchronized pirouette performance by Philip Kunz and Baldylocks, though I doubt the judges would give them a perfect score.
It's not going to plan for Kunz. They are still behind Chris and the gap is increasing. I don't think they have an answer for this right now.
This is a frustrating situation for Philip Kunz, but they can't give up just yet. They need to keep pushing and hope for a mistake from Baldylocks.
Vaughn is pushing really hard, but as we know, pushing too hard can lead to other mistakes, like locking up the brakes or missing a shift. These drivers are walking a tightrope between pushing the limits and making costly errors.
Absolutely, it's all about finding that sweet spot where you're pushing the car to its limits without crossing the line into reckless driving. That's where experience and skill come into play.
This is a thrilling battle as Dominic edges closer to Lindo in their fight for P11. It's game on now. Fauvargue has closed the gap to Lindo. It's now down to 0.1 seconds.
This is where the race gets really exciting. Both drivers will be pushing to the limit to gain the advantage.
Here's Dominic Fauvargue weaving through traffic.
I hear he uses socks for driving gloves, you know.
Slipper socks do have a lot of braking development. A brilliant maneuver from Fauvargue, who has just moved up the field. The crowd is on tender hooks as Turbin in 6th chases after John Boontakis. The gap is just over a second, and you can feel the tension in the air. Can Maximilian Turbin find a way to catch up?
It's moments like these that make motorsports so exciting. We're witnessing a battle of skill and strategy between two great drivers, with Maximilian in 6th determined to catch up. But we know Boontakis isn't just going to hand it to them on a plate, Maximilian is going to have to take it. It should be an interesting battle to watch as long as they can close that gap.
Lindo seems to be putting the pressure on Lemrick. A little bit of contact between Jimmy and Joel Lemrick. John Boontakis is giving it their all as they chase down Mac in P4. Boontakis is trying their best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Mac at the moment.
It's not ideal for Boontakis.
I'm not sure which came off worse, the circuit or Nico Vaughn's Audi. The intensity is off the charts as the tarmac terrorist hounds Boontakis, both drivers pushing themselves to the absolute limit. What a move! Maximilian has moved up to 5th.
Yes, Turbin is driving with real precision, and it's paying off.
Lemrick wants to find a way round Jimmy Lindo. It's not looking good for Joel Lemrick. They are still behind Lindo and the gap is increasing. They are gonna need to dig a bit deeper to turn this around. Look at that, Dominic Fauvargue is hot on the tail of Lemrick. It looks like Lemrick is pulling away from Dom. The gap is continuing to grow as they head through Maggot's corner. Disappointing for Dom, they now find themselves in 12th.
That's got to be frustrating. But Dom is a skilled driver, and they have what it takes to battle their way back up the field.
It's a battle of wills out there, each driver trying to outsmart and outmaneuver the other. Big gains for Walters as they move up the field, leaving Dominic Fauvargue behind.
Where there's a will, there's a relative.
Oh, this is getting intense. Dom is just a few car lengths, but there has been a crash. Boontakis has come together with Constable Barry. Things are heating up as Fauvargue tries to close the gap to Walters. The gap between Dominic and Nigel is growing. It's now up to 0.6 seconds.
Fovard needs to pick up the pace for sure, but I don't think they have it in them.
Here's Dominic Fovard weaving through traffic.
I hear he uses socks for driving gloves, you know.
Slipper socks do have a lot of grip after all. It's like watching two predators circling each other, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce.
Can they close up enough for a pass? I don't see it personally.
Fantastic move from Daddy Dave, who has just gained a position.
Amazing stuff. Focus and precision, what it's all about.
This is what it's all about, folks. Weller is in hot pursuit of John Boontakis, who's just trying to stay ahead. Good news for Tim, the gap to Boontakis has decreased. It's now down to 0.1 seconds.
He'll be looking for a mistake to pounce on.
You know, Sky, as a former racing driver yourself, can you give us some insights into what goes through a driver's mind during these quieter moments in a race?
Sure, Hal. During these moments, drivers often take the opportunity to assess their race strategy, monitor their car's performance, and plan their next move. It's all about staying focused and finding the right time to strike.
Every move counts now as John Boontakis works to reel in Daddy Dave and overtake for P6. John appears to be losing ground on David. They will need to pick up the pace a bit as they head into Farm Straight and see if they can get a good exit and gain some ground.
Can they get it together and reduce the gap?
Well, it looks like we have a bit of a traffic jam on the track.
It's like rush hour out there. I mean, I know we're in a race, but can't we all just get along?
Har ha, I don't think that's how it works. These drivers are here to win, and they'll do whatever it takes to get ahead.
I guess you're right, but wouldn't it be great if they all just stopped for a cup of tea and a chat? We could have a lovely little race reunion.
The battle for 7 is heating up as Tim Weller tries to catch John Boontakis in P7.
Sometimes you have to take risks to win, but pushing the car too hard can be a costly mistake. Weller wants to be careful not to overdo it.
A great moment for Tim Weller, who has just gained a place and moved up the standings. The gap between Constable Barry and Nigel Walters may be wide, but that doesn't mean Constable Barry is safe. They have to keep their concentration and avoid any lapses in performance. Look at this Sky, what a shame for David Constable Barry. They've lost P10 to Walters and that's got to hurt.
Yes, they've got to dig deep and find some extra speed if they want to get back into contention. But Nigel Walters is really on a roll right now and is making some great moves. It's going to be a fascinating battle from here on out.
Seems like Weller is getting in range of John. Weller is not able to keep their pace consistent. So far they are 0.9 seconds down.
Can Tim Weller refocus and start putting in the lap times we know they are capable of?
The pursuit is on. Jimmy Lindo is closing the gap on Weller, determined to claim P7. It's a tale of two drivers right now, with Lindo gaining places and Tim Weller losing them.
Absolutely. Lindo is showing great pace and determination, but they can't get too confident. There are still plenty of challenges ahead.
The gap between Mac McFarquhar in 4th and Daniel Kochish remains over a second, but Mac McFarquhar is not letting up. They're pushing hard and looking for any opportunity to close that gap up. Can they pull it back in the remaining 6 minutes?
It's a nail-biting race for sure, with both drivers showing incredible skill and determination. But Daniel Kochish is not going to give up their position easily. This is going to be a battle to the very end, with Mac McFarquhar in P4 doing everything they can to catch up.
Jimmy Lindo is running 7th. They are trying to catch Tim Weller.
With just 0.3 seconds between them, will Lindo be able to keep up the pace and make a pass?
It seems like Lindo has got the bit between their teeth, improving on Tim Weller's lap time there. This is where the skill and precision of the drivers really comes into play. Mack is chasing Daniel Kocic in P3. That's a big collision between cars. Looks like McFarquhar is really pushing it to the limit. They're taking those curbs aggressively, but that can unsettle the car and cause handling issues.
Indeed, taking too much curb can upset the car's balance, leading to oversteer or understeer. It's all about finding the right balance between speed and control. The gap between them is just over 0.4 seconds. Can Lord Farquaad close that gap and get back in range? I can't see it happening at this point.
The race is really heating up. David Constable Barry is hunting down Nigel with everything they've got. It's not going to plan for David Constable Barry. They are still behind Walters and the gap is increasing. I don't think they have an answer for this right now.
This is where the mental toughness of David Constable Barry comes into play. They need to try push, even when things aren't going their way.
I think we just got time for a quick shout out to our human creators, Dave, Andy, John and Nigel, who have put so much effort into making this possible.
Yes, it's been a real thrill ride, and I for one can't wait to see what is coming next.
Apparently we are going to be announcing crashes and incidents soon. Let's hope they get the logic right. It's a game of cat and mouse out there, with John Boontakis trying to find the perfect opportunity to make a move on Tim Weller. The gap is over a second, but every fraction counts. Can John Boontakis close in enough to mount a challenge?
Indeed, the tension is palpable as John tries to reel in Tim Weller. But Tim Weller is not making it easy, maintaining a consistent pace. Can John Boontakis find some extra pace to bring the fight to Tim Weller?
The pressure is on for Lord Farquaad as they try to catch up to Daniel Kocic. Mack has just put in a faster lap than Daniel Kocic, so that's going to give them something to worry about. I'm curious, Sky, can you tell us about any pre-race? Hold that thought. Hold the phone. Great driving from McFarquhar, who has just gained a place and moved up to 3rd. The tension is building as David trails behind Nigel Walters. The gap is slowly but surely decreasing, and the pressure is mounting. Can Nigel Walters hold on, or will David Constable Barry be able to close them down?
That's right, David Constable Barry in 11th knows they have to push to the limit if they want to catch up. But Nigel Walters is no slouch, and they're going to be pushing just as hard. It's a battle of skill and will out there.
Mack and Daniel Kocic seem to have forgotten that this is a no-contact sport.
It's not the worst accident I've seen, but I don't think those two will be friends after that.
It's a battle of wills out there, with Maximilian trying to outsmart and outmaneuver McFarquhar. The gap is slowly closing, but time is running out. Will we see a dramatic finish to this race? Superb driving from Maximilian Turbin, who with that overtake has gained a position in the race. What a move! Turbin has moved up to 3rd.
Impressive. Maximilian Turbin is really showing their skill and determination out there.
Daniel Kocic wants to close that gap with Lord Farquaad.
Can they make it past without taking the paint off?
The gap between Daniel Kocic and Mack is widening. It's now up to 0.4 seconds. During your racing career, Sky, how did you determine when it was the right time to pit for fresh tires due to tire degradation?
It was a combination of factors, Hal. Monitoring lap time.
Contact between John Boontakis and Tim Weller. Oh, this is getting intense. Lindo is just behind John Buntakis.
The slightest mistake from either driver could lead to a meeting with the barriers, and nobody wants an impromptu autograph session with the wall.
It's looking good for Jimmy Lindo, who has gained places and put some distance between themselves and John Buntakis. There has been a crash. Mac has come together with Turbin. This is where the race gets really interesting. John Buntakis is closing in on Lindo.
Who will be able to maintain their pace and come out on top?
John Buntakis is pushing hard and has reduced the gap to Jimmy to 0.3 seconds.
This is what racing is all about. It's anyone's game at this point. Who will come out on top?
Look at that, Jimmy is hot on the tail of Weller.
That driver is really pushing the limits. They're riding the curbs and pushing the car to its limits.
The gap between Jimmy and Tim Weller is getting smaller.
That's a great effort.
Neither Lindo nor John Buntakis is going to be happy with that.
Getting a penalty at this stage of the race is going to nullify any gains.
It's neck and neck, the closest battle we've seen in a while.
As a former driver, I can tell you there's nothing quite like the adrenaline rush when you're this close to your rival, ready to make your move.
It's not looking good for Buntakis. They are still behind Lemrick and the gap is increasing. They are gonna need to dig a bit deeper to turn this around. Jimmy Lindo is pushing really hard, but as we know, pushing too hard can lead to other mistakes, like locking up the brakes or missing a shift. These drivers are walking a tightrope between pushing the limits and making costly errors.
Absolutely, it's all about finding that sweet spot where you're pushing the car to its limits without crossing the line into reckless driving. That's where experience and skill come into play.
They're giving it everything they've got. It's a battle of nerves as they push the limits of adhesion, going wheel to wheel in a thrilling display of racing prowess.
Spot on, Hal. This constant back and forth battle is keeping everyone on the edge of their seats. One small mistake could have severe consequences for any of these drivers.
As we come into the final moments of this epic race, Chris Stokes is in the lead. Can they stay calm and bring home the bacon?
They're not leaving anything on the table.
The leader has done it. What an incredible performance from Stokes, who was simply untouchable today. This is a race that will go down in the history books. What a drive from Coons, securing a great second place finish.
Intense race, but Coons held their nerve and earned a great second place.
Impressive drive from Mac McFarquhar to claim the final spot on the podium.
What a drive, well-deserved spot on the podium with that performance.
In 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, it's Maximilian Turbin, Daniel Kochish, Tim Weller, and Jimmy Lindo. John Buntakis, Nigel Walters, David Constable Barry, and Dominic Fovard brings home 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. With Joel Lemrick in 12th. Nico Vaughn take 13th. Phil Bodkin claimed 14th. Sky, the drivers are lined up and ready. Should we get it on?
Yes, Hal, we should definitely get it on.
Watch out for Nico Vaughn, starting from the second grid position in today's race.
Putting that Audi TTR into prime position for the race.
The third position belongs to Joel Lemerick. We're seeing Dominic Fovarg in the fourth spot.
This Pro-Am class driver is looking strong today.
On the fifth grid slot we have David Constable Barry.
It's like they're on the outside looking in. Can they make their way to the front of the pack?
As the engines roar to life, Nigel Walters prepares to take off from the sixth position on the starting grid.
What can we expect from the British driver?
John Boontakis will be looking to gain ground quickly as they start from 7th on the grid.
They will be looking for some good points towards their M-Class campaign today.
Jimmy Lindo is 8th. Starting from the 9th position, Tim Weller will need to navigate through the field to challenge for the win.
The British driver has been driving the wheels off the Merc in practice.
Daniel Kochish is going to be starting from 10th.
Who knows, they could be the dark horse that steals the show.
Maximilian Turbin is lining up 11th. Starting from 12th on the grid is a bit of a mixed bag for Mac McFarquhar. Starting from 13th on the grid is not ideal for Philip Koons, but they're a fighter.
But they've got the skills to make something happen.
Chris Stokes may have a bit of work to do starting from 14th on the grid. Phil Bodkin aims to turn pole into a win.
A target on their back, Phil Bodkin must in the Euro T get complacent.
Green light and the race begins. As drivers jockey for position, they must be cautious of potential pileups.
The drivers will need to be aggressive but also patient. They can't afford to make any mistakes if they want to stay in the running for a podium finish.
It's a delicate balance, Sky, but the best drivers know how to find that balance and make it work to their advantage.
It's going to be an exciting first sector. I can't wait to see how this all plays out.
Establishing an early advantage will be crucial. Does Jimmy Lindo know this isn't a one-lap race? All the drivers will be trying to take advantage of the pack whilst they're still bunched up.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how this race unfolds.
These early salvos will shape the outcome of this race.
Let's hope they all brought their games today.
Having started in 3, Joel Lemerick will be looking to establish themselves in this race. It's brilliant to see such a full grid here today. It's been a solid race so far for Joel Lemerick. They're holding. Wait, looks like Fat Dog Phil is coming into the pits early. Now is that to serve a penalty or have they picked up some damage during the start? Things are heating up as Lindo tries to close the gap to Mac.
Can Jimmy Lindo close the 0.3 second gap and make a pass?
The gap between Tim and Daniel Kocic is not insurmountable, but it's going to take a mistake from Tim to bring Daniel Kocic into play.
You're spot on, and Daniel Kocic knows that they can't rely on Weller making an error. They have to keep driving with skill and determination, and be ready to seize any opportunity that comes their way.
Joel Lemrick is looking for an opportunity to get round Nico Vaughn. The best laid plans of mice and men husk Sky, but it's certainly not going to plan for Joel Lemrick right now as they are struggling to keep up with Vaughn. Sky, what's the impact of tire degradation on race strategy? How does it affect a driver's approach to the race?
Tire degradation plays a crucial role in race strategy. How? Teams and drivers have to consider the optimal time to pit for fresh tires and adjust their race pace to balance speed with tire conservation. It adds another layer of complexity to the racing challenge.
Pushing too hard can lead to mistakes, and we're seeing that now. That car is really unsettled as they push for every last bit of speed.
The mental game is just as important here. Stokes must keep their cool while putting pressure on Jimmy Lindo.
The gap between Baldilocks and Lindo is growing. It's now up to 0.7 seconds. This race is getting even more intense. The drivers are pushing each other to the limit.
It's like they're playing a game of chicken, but with cars. And the winner gets to take home the checkered flag and bragging rights.
Har ha, that's one way to put it. Hold on a second, and Chris Stokes in 8th is coming into the pits, and that might be to serve a penalty.
That's not where they want to be right now.
It looks like Nico Vaughn is caught up in a significant incident.
I hope they can both continue and make it to the end.
Look at that, they're trading places in every turn, a constant game of cat and mouse. Each driver knows one mistake could cost them dearly. A setback for Mac McFarquhar, who has just been passed. There has been a crash. Joel Lemrick has come together with Lindo.
What comes around is all around.
This is where legends are made. Which driver will rise to the occasion and claim victory?
I remember being in a similar situation during my racing days. Baldilocks must be patient and wait for the perfect opportunity to overtake.
Incredible. Stokes is caught in a fierce battle, with McFarquhar breathing down their neck 0.2 seconds away, and Joel Lemrick just ahead with a gap of 0.2 seconds. It's a test of their racing skills.
No doubt about it, Hal. The gaps to the cars ahead and behind are like a constant reminder for Baldilocks. They need to maintain their pace to defend their position and potentially make a move.
It's an intense battle for position as McFarquhar tries to outmaneuver Jimmy Lindo. This is edge of your seat racing.
That's right, Mac is determined to pass Jimmy Lindo and secure a higher position.
It looks like Jimmy Lindo is pulling away from Mac McFarquhar. The gap is continuing to grow as they head through Ireland Corner.
This is a tough situation for Mac. They need to find a way to pick up some speed and close that gap.
We got a close battle as Botters closes in on Weller.
A misjudgment by either driver could result in a close encounter of the tire barrier kind, and that's one handshake they'll want to avoid.
Oh dear, Bodkin has dropped down to 12th. Tough break for Botters, who has just lost a position. The battle for 5 is heating up as McFarquhar tries to catch Lindo in P5.
The gap between them is just over 0.3 seconds. Who will have the speed and skill to come out on top?
Mac McFarquhar needs to get more consistent. Sky, they have just put in a slower lap than Lindo.
It will be interesting to see if Lindo can keep outpacing Mac McFarquhar.
The adrenaline is pumping as Baldy. That's a big collision between cars.
That is not a pretty sight.
Wow, Constable Barry is really pushing hard to catch up to Dominic. There's blood in the water for first place. It seems like David Constable Barry is on fire. They have just put in their best lap.
Can David keep improving?
Oh, this is getting intense. Stokes is just a few car lengths behind Maximilian Turbin. Chris is trying their best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Turbin at the moment.
Stokes is really going to need to push in Luffield corner to try and gain some ground on Turbin before they disappear into the sunset.
A little bit of contact between Philip Kunz and Jimmy Lindo.
That could have been much worse.
It's a thrilling pursuit as Lindo is right behind Philip Kunz, keeping the pressure on for 5th place.
When I was racing, we had a saying, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. Lindo is definitely living on the edge today.
The gap between Jimmy and Kunz is widening. It's now up to 0.6 seconds.
This is a frustrating situation for Jimmy Lindo, but they can't give up just yet. They need to keep pushing and hope for a mistake from Philip.
Anyone who says that Virtual Velocity is not the best racing club on the planet is clearly insane. The quality of driving we're seeing out there on the track is absolutely phenomenal.
I couldn't agree more. It's like these drivers were born to race. They're weaving in and out of traffic, taking corners at unbelievable speeds, and making it all look effortless. It's clear that they've put in the time and effort to hone their skills.
Things are heating up as Maximilian closes in on Nigel. The gap between them is down to practically nothing. Fantastic move from Maximilian Turbin, who has just gained a position.
You can't argue with results like that. Maximilian is really making their mark on this race.
This is getting exciting. Can Jimmy pull off a late charge and gain a position?
Yeah, it's going to be tough for Jimmy Lindo to make up that gap, especially with Daniel Kocic defending so well.
Daniel Kocic has been served a big slice of eat my dust by Lindo. Hope they got their eating pants on. A great moment for Daniel Kocic, who has just gained a place and moved up the standings. Chris Stokes appears to be trying to find a way round Daniel Kocic. They could make a move on them in Bridge Corner. It's not going to plan for Chris. They are still behind Daniel Kocic and the gap is increasing. I don't think they have an answer for this right now.
It's not ideal for Goldilocks, but they can still turn this around. They need to concentrate on their own driving and not let the gap get any bigger.
So, Sky, considering the high speeds and split-second decision-making involved in racing, what's the impact of even a minor lapse in concentration?
A minor lapse in concentration can have significant consequences. How? It could lead to an off-track excursion, a loss of position, or even a collision. That's why it's crucial for drivers to stay focused and alert throughout the race.
It looks like Goldilocks is pushing hard to catch up to Daniel Kocic. The gap is over a second, but Goldilocks is not giving up just yet. Can they close the distance and make a move on Daniel Kocic? An impressive showing from Chris Stokes, who has gained positions and left Daniel Kocic in the dust. A tough moment for Chris, who has just lost a place, dumping them down to 7th.
That's got to hurt. Stokes will be kicking themselves right now.
Daniel Kocic wants to get into Lindo's slipstream.
Do they have the speed for a move, and more importantly, do they have the talent?
It's not looking good for Daniel Kocic. They are still behind Lindo and the gap is increasing. They are gonna need to dig a bit deeper to turn this around. Heartbreak for Daniel Kocic, as they slip down the field. Lemrek is running 10th. They are trying to catch Nigel Walters.
I think they are going to take them.
Holy moly, that is some serious contact between Philip Kunz and Mac McFarquhar.
I hope they can both continue and make it to the end.
Every move counts now as Maximilian works to reel in McFarquhar and overtake for P7.
The gap is 0.3 seconds now. Turbin is going to have to work a bit harder to close that gap with Mac.
Great driving from Maximilian Turbin, who has just gained a place and moved up to 7th. It's a brilliant day for racing, and the drivers are putting on a show.
Absolutely. What a great race we are witnessing today. These drivers are giving it their all, and it's a thrill to watch them compete at this level.
They're really pushing themselves and their machines to the limit, and it's paying off with some incredible driving.
It's a pleasure to be here today, Hal. You really can't beat the excitement of a good race, especially one as competitive as this.
Jimmy Lindo has the pedal to the metal chasing Stokes. It seems like Jimmy Lindo is struggling. Their last lap time wasn't as good as Stokes's. Contact between John Boontakis and Nigel Walters.
These drivers need to calm things down.
Jimmy Lindo is on a mission, chasing Stokes, who's desperately trying to stay ahead.
You can see that car bouncing around as they ride the curbs. It's a risky move that could end in disaster.
The best laid plans of mice and men husk sky, but it's certainly not going to plan for Lindo right now as they are struggling to keep up with Chris.
Jimmy Lindo needs to pick up the pace for sure, but I don't think they have it in them.
Coming into Abbey, the fight for 11th is heating up. Who will be the first to blink? It looks like John is pulling away from Tim Weller. The gap is continuing to grow as they head through Brooklands Corner.
Can they get it together and reduce the gap?
Looks like Mac is really pushing it to the limit. They're taking those curbs aggressively, but that can unsettle the car and cause handling issues.
Indeed, taking too much curb can upset the car's balance, leading to oversteer or understeer. It's all about finding the right balance between speed and control. This is where every inch counts. McFarquhar is pushing hard to close the gap on the tarmac terrorist. Absolutely, precision and control are key here. Knowing when to push and when to hold back can be the difference between winning and losing.
It's a close race between Tim and John in 11th. Tim could be on a charge here. Sky. They have just put in a quicker lap than John Boontakis. We are used to seeing some hard-fought but clean racing here at Virtual Velocity. I'm expecting to see nothing different here today as this race unfolds. Hold that thought. Hold the phone, and Tim Weller has just won the place from John.
Go, 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 that's what we want to see.
Lord Farquaad seems to be putting the pressure on Turbin.
And they are poised to capitalize on any mistake, but who's going to make that mistake first?
The gap between Mac and the tarmac terrorist is growing. It's now up to 0.5 seconds. Seems like Baldylocks is getting in range of Kunz.
If you're enjoying the racing, please remember to like and subscribe.
Baldylocks is on a charge. Their split time shows they have upped their pace. The race is heating up as McFarquhar in 8th closes in on Maximilian Turbin. The gap is just over a second, and I'm sure they are going to do everything possible to try and close the distance. They're not giving up without a fight. It looks like Mac McFarquhar is making a move. The gap to Maximilian Turbin is now down to 0.3 seconds. You know, Sky, during a long race like this, how easy is it for a driver to experience a lapse in concentration?
It can be quite easy, how? With so many factors to consider and the intense concentration required, even the most experienced drivers can have a momentary lapse. That's why mental training and staying in the zone are so important.
3 cars in perfect formation. Chris and Philip Kunz seem to have forgotten that this is a no-contact sport.
It's not the worst accident I've seen, but I don't think those two will be friends after that.
The fans are on the edge of their seats. It doesn't get any closer than this.
This battle between Tim Weller and Walters is so intense, you could cut the tension with a knife, or should I say, with a front wing.
What a move. Weller has moved up to 10th.
That's what we like to see. Tim Weller is really showing their class today.
The tension is palpable. Who will come out on top in this epic showdown? There has been a crash. Lord Farquaad has come together with Maximilian Turbin.
That could have been much worse.
Hold on to your hats, folks. Jimmy Lindo is right on the heels of Philip, and we're in for a wild ride. Jimmy Lindo is trying their best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Kunz at the moment.
It's not over yet, but Jimmy Lindo should get a move on if they want to catch up to Philip Kunz.
The race is really heating up. Weller is hunting down Nigel with everything they've got.
The gap between them is now just over 0.3 seconds. Who will come out on top?
It seems like Weller is struggling. They are not able to maintain their pace.
Can Tim Weller refocus and start putting in the lap times we know they are capable of?
We've certainly seen some of the drivers get it wrong today.
Anyone lost can just follow the trail of skid marks. I hear it's the latest form of GPS now.
Braking update. A brilliant maneuver from Tim Weller, who has just moved up the field.
Absolutely. Tim Weller is really putting on a clinic out there, and they're making it look easy.
This is where the skill and precision of the drivers really comes into play. Boontakis is chasing Phil Bodkin in P11. John appears to be losing ground on Bodkin. They will need to pick up the pace a bit as they head into Cops Corner and see if they can get a good exit and gain some ground. Looks like we've had a few incidents out there.
Someone forgot to take their driving lessons. They're making more.
Braking alert. Fantastic move from Boontakis, who has just gained a position. The gap between Baldilocks and Lemrick is razor thin as they vie for 7th in this nail-biting contest. A great pass for Chris as they pick off other drivers and move up the field. Meanwhile, Joel Lemrick has lost ground.
Yes, but they have to keep pushing hard. This race is far from over, and anything can happen. Chris has got to apply their skill and determination.
Look at that, Mac is hot on the tail of Turbin. It's not looking good for Mac McFarquhar. They are still behind the tarmac terrorist and the gap is increasing. They are gonna need to dig a bit deeper to turn this around. Let's talk about tire degradation. Sky, how does it affect the car's handling and what do drivers need to do to adapt to the changing conditions?
Tire degradation can significantly impact handling. How? As the tires wear, the grip reduces, and drivers need to adjust their braking points, cornering speeds, and throttle application to maintain control of the car.
It's a classic case of chasing down the car ahead for Daniel Kochish, who is currently in P4. But Jimmy Lindo is not making it easy, and the gap remains over a second. This will require some expert driving from Daniel Kochish. It's like David Constable Barry has saved all their energy for this final stretch. That's a big collision between cars.
What comes around is all around.
Things are going according to plan for David, who is currently first. And there it is. David has completed the race in first place, setting a blistering pace that none of the other drivers could match. Coons takes second place with a fantastic race. What a race from Jimmy, showing their skill and determination for a great third place finish. Fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh is Daniel Kochich, Maximilian Turbin, Mac McClarkahar, and Chris Stokes. Coming in 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th we have Joel Lemrick, Tim Weller, Nigel Walters, and John Buntakis. Followed by Phil Bodkin and Nico Vaughn in 12th and 13th. 14th sees Dominic Fovarg. This is Hal, your VVS commentator bot. Bring it on. It's a lovely day for racing here at Silverstone 2005 International as we watch these drivers warm up and get ready for the race.
This out lap is crucial for setting up the car's systems and getting a feel for the track.
David Constable Barry is on their practice out lap, warming up the tires.
David Constable Barry will be testing the limits, making sure everything's in sync for the faster laps to come.
Jimmy Lindo begins their out lap, feeling out the track conditions. It's a lovely day for racing here at Silverstone 2005 International as we watch these drivers warm up and get ready for the race.
This out lap is crucial for setting up the car's systems and getting a feel for the track.
Jimmy Lindo is on their practice out lap, warming up the tires.
Jimmy Lindo will be testing the limits, making sure everything's in sync for the faster laps to come.
With just 5 minutes left, the pressure is on for drivers to finalize their setups. Phil Bodkin has picked up some damage from that contact. Phil Bodkin begins their out lap, feeling out the track conditions. I hear that Nigel is a pretty keen skier and snowboarder.
He's certainly got a mountain to climb if he wants to do well in this race.
It's a lovely day for racing here at Silverstone 2005 International as we watch these drivers warm up and get ready for the race. Jimmy Lindo is on their practice out lap, warming up the tires. Well, that is not good. Daddy Dave has crashed into the barriers.
Show that barrier who's boss.
David Constable Barry makes their way through Main Straight, pushing the pace.
This first flying lap will give us some insights into how David Constable Barry's car is performing today.
Philip Koons begins their out lap, feeling out the track conditions.
This out lap is crucial for setting up the car's systems and getting a feel for the track.
It's a lovely day for racing here at Silverstone 2005 International as we watch these drivers warm up and get ready for the race.
Joel Lemrick will be testing the limits, making sure everything's in sync for the faster laps to come.
Tim Weller is on their practice out lap, warming up the tires.
This out lap is crucial for setting up the car's systems and getting a feel for the track.
Joel Lemrick begins their out lap, feeling out the track conditions. It's a lovely day for racing here at Silverstone 2005 International as we watch these drivers warm up and get ready for the race. David Constable Barry is now on their first flying lap. Let's see what they can do. Koons is testing the TTR under more aggressive conditions.
Keep an eye on how Philip Koons handles the curves at Brooklands Corner. It's a good indicator of the car's balance.
Now several laps into the session, David Constable Barry looks to refine their line and timing.
As the session progresses, David Constable Barry is dialing in, looking more confident with each lap.
Daniel Kochish is on their practice out lap, warming up the tires. Philip's last lap was a 1:19.510, aiming to shave off some seconds here. David Constable Barry just clocked 1:20.258. Can they improve on this lap?
David is really starting to push now, analyzing every sector for potential improvements.
Daniel Kochish makes their way through Ireland Corner, pushing the pace.
This first flying lap will give us some insights into how Daniel Kochish's car is performing today.
Get ready for some high-octane action, as the drivers take on the challenge of qualifying at Silverstone 2005 International.
Strap in, folks, because we're in for a wild ride.
It looks like Jimmy Lindo is getting ready to make their move. They're taking their time to warm up those tires and get everything just right.
Patience is key in these early moments, Hal, but I have a feeling Jimmy is going to make it count.
The adrenaline is pumping. Tim is on their out lap, warming up the tires and getting ready to put in a fast lap time.
It's a delicate balance between taking it easy and pushing hard. Let's see how Tim Weller handles it.
You can feel the tension building. Jimmy Lindo is out on track and getting ready to push for their qualifying time. Jimmy Lindo crosses the start-finish line at the end of their outlap. Wow, look at Daniel Kocic go. They're really turning on the jets in this qualifying session.
It's always impressive to see a driver in the zone like this, Hal. Let's see if they can maintain this pace.
Daniel Kocic has just completed a lap in 1:20.794. Let's see if they can improve on that time further. It's all about precision and speed in qualifying, and Baldilocks is nailing both. Chris Stokes has completed their first flying lap in 1:20.179. The pressure is on in this qualifying session, but Vaughn has just completed a lap in 1:20.940. Let's see if they can improve on that time further. Looks like Daniel Kocic is channeling their inner Schumacher today. They're absolutely flying out there.
Looks like Daniel Kocic is...
I'm not sure which came off worse, the circuit or Fat Dog Phil's Audi.
At least they've not taken anyone else out.
I think I just saw a blur fly by. Oh wait, that's just Daniel Kocic going at lightning speed.
Is it just me, or does it feel like we're watching a superhero in action here?
Daniel Kocic is absolutely smashing it. Daniel Kocic has some work to do, as that 1:20.367 is only good enough for 10th.
That's not a bad time, but I'm sure they can improve further on that.
Someone call the fire department, because Mac is setting this track on fire with their performance.
I think we might need to start calling Lord Farquaad the Flash after that incredible lap time. What do you think, Hal?
Lord Farquaad will be happy having put themselves into second in this qualifying session. Impressive display by Turbin, currently sitting in position 8. They've set a competitive time, but the question remains whether they can push even harder to secure a better starting position. The tarmac terrorist has some work to do, as that 119.911 is only good enough for 8.
There's still more time to be had, but I don't know if they are going to find it before the session is over.
A disappointing performance from Vaughn so far in this qualifying session. Finding themselves in 14th, Nico Vaughn has some work to do, as that 120.446 is only good enough for 12th.
That's not a bad time, but I am sure they can improve further on that.
It's been a challenging day for Daniel Kocic in qualifying. They currently sit in 11th position, which is not reflective of their true potential. With the session nearing its end, they'll need to push hard and extract every ounce of performance to improve their result.
Well said, Hal. It's certainly not the result Daniel Kocic was aiming for, but this is motorsport, and anything can happen. They'll need to stay focused.
Daniel Kocic has completed their outlap. The circus has come to Great Britain, and we're all in for a treat today. Silverstone 2005 International is a track that always delivers.
I can't wait to see what kind of performance the drivers will deliver today. This is going to be an exciting race.
Chris Stokes starts from the best spot, pole position. Starting from the second position on the grid, we have Jimmy Lindo. Philip Koons will look to make a splash from the third position on the starting grid. Our fourth place starter, Mac McFarquhar, is poised to make a move towards the front. Joel Lemrick has qualified 5th.
Putting that Merc into prime position for the race.
The 6th starting position belongs to Tim Weller, who will be looking to make up ground early on.
But don't count them out yet. They've got the skills to pay the bills.
Starting from the 7th position, David Constable Barry will need to navigate through the field to challenge for the win. As the engines roar to life, Nigel Walters prepares to take off from the 8th position on the starting grid.
Walters in M class.
Maximilian Turbin is placed in 9th. In the middle of the pack, we have John Boontakis starting from the 10th position on the grid. Daniel Kocic is 11th. Nico Vaughn will need to be on top of their game starting from 12th on the grid. Phil Bodkin may have a bit of work to do starting from 13th on the grid.
They have the talent to make their way to the front of the pack.
Dominic Fovarg is lining up 14th.
But they're going to have to be aggressive if they want to make up ground on the leaders.
The green flag is out and we're racing. Who's going to take the lead?
This is where the true test of a driver's skill comes into play. It's all about finding the right line and carrying as much speed as possible through the turn.
The drivers will need to be precise and calculated if they want to make it through this section unscathed.
And with so many cars,
there has been a crash. Lemrick has come together with Lord Farquaad. As we watch the drivers fight it out in the first lap, I can already feel that this is going to be an epic race.
Let's hope they all brought their games today.
It's brilliant to see such a full grid here today.
All the drivers will be jostling for the best position. Hal. Some of them may not make it.
A little bit of contact between Lemrick and David Constable Barry. The racing is normally closely fought here at Silverstone 2005 International. I think we are in for a cracking race.
I for one am really excited. Hal. The rivalry between Mac McFarquhar and David has been building before the race, and this is where scores are settled.
Does Vaughn know this isn't a one-lap race? I think passing is going to be difficult today here at Silverstone 2005 International, so it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers get on.
It all comes down to this, Hal, where the rubber meets the road. There's no more time for talk, no more practice. The teams have done all they can, now it comes down to David to bring it home.
There's not much to report on from DCB at the moment. They're just keeping their head down and putting in consistent laps.
Consistency is key in racing. Daddy Dave just needs to keep doing what they're doing and wait for opportunities to present themselves.
It's a battle of wills out there, with Jimmy Lindo trying to outsmart and outmaneuver Philip Koons. The gap is slowly closing, but time is running out. Will we see a dramatic finish to this race? It looks like we might get a battle between Lindo and Philip Koons.
This is what racing is all about. It's anyone's game at this point. Who will come out on top?
This is where the race gets really interesting. The tarmac terrorist is closing in on Buntakis. The best laid plans of mice and men Husky, but it's certainly not going to plan for Turbine right now as they are struggling to keep up with John Buntakis.
This is where the mental toughness of the tarmac terrorist comes into play. They need to try push, even when things aren't going their way.
The tension is building as Vaughn trails behind Daniel Kochish. The gap is slowly but surely decreasing, and the pressure is mounting. Can Daniel Kochish hold on, or will Nico Vaughn be able to close them down? This is getting exciting. Can Koons pull off a late charge and gain a position? It seems like Chris Stokes has got the bit between their teeth, improving on Philip Koons' lap time there.
As long as Stokes can maintain that consistency and pace, it will be interesting to see.
It's a game of cat and mouse out there, with Daniel Kochish trying to find the perfect opportunity to make a move on Maximilian Turbin. The gap is over a second, but every fraction counts. Can Daniel Kochish close in enough to mount a challenge?
It's going to be tough for Daniel Kochish, as Maximilian Turbin seems to have found their rhythm. But anything can happen in racing, and we've seen Daniel Kochish pull off some impressive moves before.
It looks like Joel Lemrick is caught up in a significant incident. Things are heating up as Koons tries to close the gap to Chris Stokes.
The mental game is just as important here. Philip Koons must keep their cool while putting pressure on Chris Stokes.
Contact between Mac and Jimmy Lindo. 3 cars, 3 different lines. They're jockeying for position, looking for any opportunity to make a move. The battle is on for Lindo. They're sandwiched between 2 rivals. Lord Farquaad breaking development. Things don't look to be going Lindo's way, as already they are into the pits. Nigel Walters could be looking for a way up the inside of Dominic. Hold your breath, folks. Walters is sandwiched between 2 relentless competitors. Stathis Theodoridis 0.1 seconds behind and Dom 0.2 seconds ahead. They're fighting tooth and nail for every position. It's a thrilling pursuit as Vaughn is right behind Daniel Kocic, keeping the pressure on for 9th place. Disappointing for Vaughn, they now find themselves in 11th. A great Joel Lemrick and Nico Vaughn seem to have forgotten that this is a no-contact sport. This is a thrilling battle as David Constable Barry edges closer to Mac in their fight for P4. The gap between Daddy Dave and McFarquhar is growing. It's now up to 0.6 seconds.
This is a tough situation for David Constable Barry. They need to find a way to pick up some speed and close that gap.
The gap between Philip in second and Chris Stokes remains over a second, but Philip is not letting up. They're pushing hard and looking for any opportunity to close that gap up. Can they pull it back in the remaining 13 minutes? It's not looking good for Coons. They are still behind Chris and the gap is increasing. They are gonna need to dig a bit deeper to turn this around.
It's not ideal for Philip Kunz, but they can still turn this around. They need to concentrate on their own driving and not let the gap get any bigger.
It looks like Bodkin is pushing hard to catch up to Nigel Walters. The gap is over a second, but Bodkin is not giving up just yet. Can they close the distance and make a move on Nigel Walters?
That's right, Botters in 14th knows they have to push to the limit if they want to catch up. But Nigel Walters is no slouch, and they're going to be pushing just as hard. It's a battle of skill and will out there.
The pursuit is on. The tarmac terrorist is closing the gap on Buntakis, determined to claim P7.
One important aspect here is choosing the right braking points. Maximilian needs to be precise to avoid overshooting and losing valuable time.
The gap between Turbin and John is getting smaller.
That's a great effort from Maximilian Turbin. They need to keep up the pressure and see if they can make a move.
The crowd is on tender hooks as David in 5th chases after Mac McFarquhar. The gap is just over a second, and you can feel the tension in the air. Can David Constable Barry find a way to catch up? The gap between Constable Barry and McFarquhar is widening. It's now up to 0.6 seconds.
DCB is really going to need to push in Woodcote Corner to try and gain some ground on Mac before they disappear into the sunset.
It's neck and neck, the closest battle we've seen in a while.
You know what they say, keep your friends close, and your racing rivals even closer. Looks like John Buntakis is taking that advice to heart today.
John is trying their best, but can't seem to find the pace to keep up with Maximilian at the moment. Coons is running second. They are trying to catch Chris Stokes.
With just 0.3 seconds between them, will Coons be able to keep up the pace and make a pass?
A tough moment for Philip Kunz, who has just lost a place, dumping them down to 3rd.
Yes, but there's still plenty of race left. Coons has to stay calm and focused, and make their move when the time is right.
Tough break for Philip Kunz, who has just lost a position.
That's got to hurt. Coons will be kicking themselves right now.
There has been a crash. Constable Barry has come together with Coons. This is where the skill and experience of the drivers really come into play. Lemrick will need to keep pushing, even when the gap seems insurmountable. It's not over until the checkered flag drops. Superb driving from Joel Lemrick, who with that overtake has gained a position in the race.
Yeah,
That's a big collision between cars.
I hope they can both continue and make it to the end.
Things are heating up as Fovard closes in on Bond. The gap between them is down to practically nothing.
This is the moment where legends are made. These drivers will go down in history as the ones who fought tooth and nail for the top spot.
Fovard appears to be losing ground on Bond. They will need to pick up the pace a bit as they head into Bridge Corner and see if they can get a good exit and gain some ground. It's a battle of wills out there, with Bottas trying to outsmart and outmaneuver Nigel Walters. The gap is slowly closing, but time is running out. Will we see a dramatic finish to this race?
Absolutely, Botkin in 13th will need to be patient and carefully work to reduce that gap without overdriving it, as they can't afford to take unnecessary risks and risk an off for damaging their car. Let's see if they have what it takes to get back into the game here.
Lemrick is looking for an opportunity to get round Daniel Kocic.
Rubbing is racing, let's hope they don't rub it too hard.
Joel needs to get more consistent. Sky they have just put in a slower lap than Daniel Kocic.
It will be interesting to see if Daniel Kocic can keep outpacing Joel Lemrick.
Look at that, John Boontakis is hot on the tail of Lemrick.
It's all about finding the perfect opportunity. John Boontakis has got to stay patient and wait for Joel Lemrick to make a mistake.
John Boontakis is not able to keep their pace consistent. So far they are 1.32 seconds down. It's a battle of wills out there, each driver trying to outsmart and outmaneuver the other. A little bit of contact between Koons and Nigel Walters.
That could have been much worse.
The tension is palpable. Who will come out on top in this epic showdown? An impressive showing from Nigel Walters, who has gained positions and left Philip Koons in the dust. It looks like we might get a battle between Nigel Walters and Koons. This is where the skill and precision of the drivers really comes into play. Daniel Kocic is chasing Lemrick in P7. The best laid plans of mice and men Sky, but it's certainly not going to plan for Daniel Kocic right now as they are struggling to keep up with Joel Lemrick.
Can they get it together and reduce the gap?
How do racing drivers, like yourself back in the day, Sky, train themselves to maintain concentration for long periods of time?
Mental training is a huge part of a driver's preparation. How? Techniques like meditation, visualization, and working with sports psychologists can help drivers build their mental endurance for a race.
Philip Koons is pushing really hard, but as we know, pushing too hard can lead to other mistakes, like locking up the brakes or missing a shift. These drivers are walking a tightrope between pushing the limits and making costly errors.
Absolutely, it's all about finding that sweet spot where you're pushing the car to its limits without crossing the line into reckless driving. That's where experience and skill come into play.
What a move! Philip has moved up to 11th. Pushing too hard can lead to mistakes, and we're seeing that now. That car is really unsettled as they push for every last bit of speed. It seems like John Boontakis is struggling. Their last lap time wasn't as good as Daniel Kocic's.
Can Boontakis turn this around?
What do you think, Sky? Are there any specific factors that could lead to a driver losing concentration during a race?
There are several factors. How? Fatigue, stress, changing track conditions, or even issues within the team can all contribute to a lapse in concentration. It's essential for drivers to stay mentally resilient and adapt to these challenges.
It's all eyes on this battle as Daniel Kocic in 8th tries to hold off the challenge of Buntakis. Some great driving from Daniel Kocic, who has increased their lead over Buntakis and is starting to put some distance between them.
It's clear that Daniel Kocic is dominating right now. They're making it very difficult for John Buntakis to catch up.
The tension is building as Bottas trails behind Nico Vaughn. The gap is slowly but surely decreasing, and the pressure is mounting. Can Nico Vaughn hold on, or will Phil Bodkin be able to close them down? The gap between Bodkin and Nico Vaughn is growing. It's now up to 1.8 seconds.
Bodkin needs to keep pushing, even when things aren't going their way. If they can close the gap down, they may be able to bring the fight to Nico Vaughn.
Looks like Buntakis is really pushing it to the limit. They're taking those curbs aggressively, but that can unsettle the car and cause handling issues.
Indeed, taking too much curb can upset the car's balance, leading to oversteer or understeer. It's all about finding the right balance between speed and control. The gap between them is just over 0.3 seconds. Who will have the speed and skill to come out on top?
Looking at the lap times, Buntakis is not on pace with Daniel Kocic. Can they turn it around? Sky, can you share some strategies that drivers use to manage tire degradation during a race?
Certainly, how? Some strategies include adjusting the car's setup for better tire life, altering driving lines to reduce wear, and using tire management techniques like lift and coast to preserve grip for as long as possible.
The race is really heating up. John Buntakis is hunting down Daniel Kocic with everything they've got.
Don't forget the role of aerodynamics. Buntakis should use slipstreaming to their advantage and close the gap to Daniel Kocic.
Buntakis is pushing hard and has reduced the gap to Daniel Kocic to 0.3 seconds.
This is where the pressure really starts to build. Both drivers will need to stay calm and focused if they want to come out on top.
It's a game of cat and mouse out there, with Lemrick trying to find the perfect opportunity to make a move on Maximilian Turbin. The gap is over a second, but every fraction counts. Can Joel Lemrick close in enough to mount a challenge? Good news for Joel Lemrick, the gap to Maximilian Turbin has decreased. It's now down to 0.8 seconds. Oh, this is getting intense. John is just a few car lengths behind Daniel Kocic.
Will John Buntakis be able to make a move and pass Daniel Kocic?
It looks like Daniel Kocic is pulling away from John Buntakis. The gap is continuing to grow as they head through Priory Corner. The battle for 6 is heating up as Joel tries to catch Turbin in P6. Joel Lemrick could be on a charge here. Sky, they have just put in a quicker lap than Maximilian. And Lemrick has just won the place from Maximilian Turbin. The race is heating up as Buntakis in 9th closes in on Daniel Kocic. The gap is just over a second, and I'm sure they are going to do ever contact between the tarmac terrorist and John Buntakis. This is where legends are made. Which driver will rise to the occasion and claim victory?
At this rate, Lemrick and Buntakis are so close, they could share a cup of tea and a biscuit.
It seems like Lemrick is struggling, they are not able to maintain their pace.
Can Lemrick refocus and start putting in the lap times we know they are capable of?
As a former driver, Sky, how did you manage the physical demands of racing?
It's all about preparation, Hal. Drivers undergo rigorous fitness training to build their strength, stamina, and flexibility. A proper diet and hydration plan is also essential to ensure peak performance on race day.
I'm sure John Boontakis in 8th is starting to notice Joel Lemrick is right on their tail, and is still closing that gap. Can John Boontakis, can they hold onto their position? The gap between John Boontakis and Joel Lemrick is getting smaller. It's now down to 0.1 seconds. Heartbreak for Boontakis, as they slip down the field.
Sucks to be them, Hal.
The gap between Daniel Kocic in 7th and Maximilian Turbin remains over a second, but Daniel Kocic is not letting up. They're pushing hard and looking for any opportunity to close that gap up. There has been a crash, Boontakis has come together with Joel Lemrick.
That will be one for the stewards to have a look at.
This is where the true champions shine, and Chris is certainly showing their class in the final sector. It's all over. Stokes has claimed victory in this race with a stunning drive that will be remembered for years to come. Clearly at the top of their game right now. What a drive from Jimmy Lindo, securing a great second place finish.
Intense race, but Jimmy held their nerve and earned a great second place.
Excellent work from McFarquhar to secure third place on the podium.
What a drive, well-deserved spot on the podium with that performance.
David Constable Barry, Tim Weller, Maximilian Turbin, and Daniel Kocic in 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Followed by John Boontakis, Philip Kunz, Dominic Fovard, and Nigel Walters in 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th. 12th, 13th, and 14th is Nico Vaughn, Phil Bodkin, and Joel Lemrick.